Can't nobody make you feel bad for something you already knew you was wrong for. Ain't nobody been funny. That's called guilt. And baby, the only way you gonna feel better is if you do better. That means you gonna have to learn better. Everybody know how it feels to be wrong. Don't nobody like being wrong, but if you are humble enough and you know that you're not perfect and you know that there's always room to learn more, then you should not feel so hard on yourself when you make a mistake. We all know what it feels like to be wrong. We know what it feels like to fall. But not everybody get up. Not everybody will choose to do right. That's obedience. Not everybody will be obedient. When you do wrong, correct yourself so others won't have to. And keep doing that so nobody will never have to check you. And when they call you out on it, you can explain your actions because you are in a different mindset to look back and say, oh, I understand why I lied. I couldn't be honest with that person. And then you ask yourself why you couldn't be honest with that person. Well, that person's reaction, I didn't like it. But why did you tell them the truth if you already lied to them over and over again? Well, because I have a conscience. That's it. Because you have a conscience. And that conscience will show through your face. So when you lie, it will tell everybody you're lying before everybody even try to believe you. I think that's why some people like assholes, because assholes don't give a about lying. They just tell you straight up. And since being honest can be looked at as an asshole, they accept them looking like an asshole. But you can't say they're a liar. The thing about growth is once you get up here and you seen where you came from, and anybody else, no matter where they come from, they try to bring up when you was down here. You can talk about this all day because you are you operating up here, explaining when you were down here. And that person, wherever they come from, has no choice but to understand and respect your growth. So what? I used to sell drugs. I'm an entrepreneur. I did that back then because I had a family. I just had my first baby. I just lost my job. Bills had to get paid. So once I got there and I had to do what I had to do, I made it worth it. And I made it up here and I would never go back. So when I see people and they're down and I recognize that they were at a point where I was, I can actually bring them up if they want to. If they're really trying to strive and come up here on this level, I can help them. And we both can be up, going our separate ways as long as we up here, operating in our highest. So don't feel bad that you had to go through this to get up here. Regardless of what you did, you acknowledge that it was wrong. And when you acknowledge that it was wrong, you made right. You did better. And that's the importance of it. If you gonna lie and you gonna keep lying and lying and lying and lying, you might well stay down here. But if you gonna lie and then realizing that I should have been honest, and you go back and you start repenting, you start telling yourself the truth, coming out with the truth, then you up here. No woman was born a woman. No man is born a man. All that shit you had to evolve, had to grow, had to learn, had to be wrong, had to make right, had to do better, had to look at things from a different light, a different point of view. You had to practice empathy. You had to not give a fuck. You had to respect yourself and love yourself. You had to create boundaries. You had to understand. And you also have to leave room for other people to grow. But everybody seems like it's embarrassing to grow because Everybody said, you're supposed to be up here. You're supposed to have this. You're supposed to have that. You're supposed to have all these things. Nah, don't make nobody feel bad because they're not there yet. You weren't always there. And if you was, have empathy, because God has a funny way of turning those tables to people who don't practice empathy. If you grew up with a mentality that you should hunt deer and just go hunting animals and maybe people for sport and fun, not for survival, but for fun, and then you hang the antlers up on your wall like a trophy, in your next lifetime, you better hope that is not you. People be embarrassed to talk about their growth. For what? Everybody grows. When you explain your growth, you help others. You humble yourself enough so that others can say, I understand what I must do because I see the way you went and I don't want to go that way. Or I want to try that way because I've never tried it before. When you're constantly trying to be the best person you can be, you're automatically, you naturally practice empathy. And when you practice empathy, you obtain knowledge. Because how else would you know? When God came down, God said, I want to experience life as a human. And when God got down here, that's when mercy was given. Because now I understand why humans do that. And then at a certain part of your growth, you see there are some things you cannot make excuses for. And that's when judgment has to be called. And if I can judge myself, correct myself when I'm wrong, prove myself wrong to make sure that I'm right, and prove myself right to make sure I'm standing correct so that nobody has to check me, and whatever I think I know nothing. And the more I learn, I question more because I know nothing. But I am a humble point to where I know what I know. And I'm at another humble point to I expand on everything I think I know. When I can check myself and judge myself justly, I don't fear nobody else's judgment. I don't care too much about nobody else's judgment. I care about how you got to that perspective because I don't want to do whatever I did to make that look like that. Sometimes it's not in my control. Serenity. And I accept that. When I say I don't give a fuck, and I honestly do not give a fuck about Charlie Kirk, I'm not saying that to celebrate his death. I'm saying that because I have more empathy for my ancestor than I do him. I understand my lack of empathy. Do you understand what you're empathizing with? Who you're empathizing for? God has mercy, but mercy can also run out. Me going through my trials and tribulation just so I can share my testimony with others to help them be in a better position? Nah, I won't feel bad. You can't make me feel bad for going through something that nobody else would have made it out of. Nah, I'ma share my wrongs and my rights because I want others to do right. And I understand they're wrong because I'm not perfect either. I think that's what God wanted people to do. That's why God said, treat others the way you want to be treated, as if you were them. Because if only you knew, if you've been there, if you felt that way, you wouldn't maintain that mentality. People are afraid to change because it's embarrassing. I'm not embarrassed to change. I embrace it. And that's one thing that I do expect. The unexpected.